The deck shivers under his boots as he stays bent, knees already flexed, weight forward. The engine's grind is steady until a higher sound cuts across it, thin at first, then sharp enough to push through his ears and into his chest. The whistle drops fast. Hands slap the metal without anyone saying a word. Bodies fold down, helmets knocking ribs of steel, faces pressed into packs dark with water and oil. The smell is close and thick. Fuel, wet wool, old metal. It sits in his nose as he pulls air in short pieces and lets it out the same way. The deck is cold through the soles of his boots. He grips the edge of a bench, fingers sliding on damp paint, and keeps his head low. The vibration doesn't stop. It runs through his legs and up into his jaw, locking his teeth together. Another man's shoulder presses into his back. He shifts to make room and ends up tighter than before. The sound passes somewhere beyond them, but his body doesn't follow it. His chest stays tight. His throat dries. The idea comes clear and heavy, without pictures or words to soften it. This sound is meant for where they are. He stays folded, eyes open, waiting for what comes next, the deck still moving under him. Words he learned earlier drift up and break apart before they finish forming. They don't attach to anything solid. The whistle comes back in his head, replayed without his choosing, even though the strike landed somewhere else. The engine keeps churning beneath the deck, a low push that never changes. His hands move on their own, sliding along canvas straps, finding slick gloves, the edge of a bench, anything that doesn't move away when he grips it. Light leaks through the seam of the ramp in a thin line. He turns his head slightly but keeps his eyes off it. The brightness feels exposed, unfinished. His fingers tingle and then go dull, as if the blood has been asked to wait. He draws air in shallow pulls, shoulders rising too high each time. The craft keeps moving forward. Somewhere beyond the metal, something has responded. The thought settles with weight, they are answering. His body moves before he tells it to. A tremor runs through his arms as the craft rocks unevenly, metal creaking under the shift. Sweat gathers inside the helmet liner and slides down into his eyes. He blinks hard and keeps his head forward, pressed close to the man in front of him. There is no space between shoulders now. The air feels used up. Fear settles behind his eyes with weight, not sharp, but exact. It presses inward, narrowing what he can hold. The sounds around him flatten, leaving only breath and the scrape of boots on steel. His throat goes dry. He swallows and feels nothing move. His hands tighten around his rifle sling until his fingers shake. Images stripped down to parts. Skin against cloth. Bone under weight. The pull of breath in and out. A single word forms without sound and does not leave. He stays where he is, rocking with the craft, thinking only this: I want to stay. Time loosens its grip and stretches thin. He can't tell how long they've been moving like this, only that the craft keeps advancing in short, uneven pushes. Each lurch shifts his weight against the damp wood bench, the edge pressing into his lower back until the muscle tightens and stays that way. The ceiling hangs low above him, webbing and packs swaying slightly with every change in speed. He listens to everything. The engine's steady churn, the slap of water against the hull, the rattle of metal somewhere forward. Each sound is tested and sorted, then tested again, as if one of them might change and explain what comes next. No one speaks. A man across from him opens his mouth, then closes it. Another works his jaw without sound. Breath moves in and out, quick and shallow, filling the space and leaving it again. The air smells of wet gear and old fuel. Moisture seeps through his trousers where the bench has soaked through. He shifts once, then stops, choosing the ache over the movement. His shoulders stay lifted, never dropping. Fear no longer spikes or fades. It settles in, steady as the engine, a constant hum under everything else. The craft inches forward again. He braces without thinking, eyes down, jaws set, holding to the same thought each time the motion pauses. Not yet. The ramp seam glows brighter, a thin blade of light cutting the dark. Metal groans under a small adjustment, and the sound of surf lifts, not loud yet, just present. Air pushes in, cold and sharp, carrying salt that settles on the lips. A hand tightens around a strap. Boots slide half an inch as the floor vibrates. Someone breathes through the mouth, slow and forced. The outside presses closer without showing itself. Salt burns on the lips when the tongue passes over them. The taste stays. Breathing shortens, then steadies, then shortens again. Sweat cools under the collar as the air shifts. Fingers flex inside damp gloves, then still. The noise of water grows fuller, layered, impossible to ignore. Adrenaline lifts the body, sharp and sudden, draining the weight from tired legs. The thought comes without ceremony, this is it. Bodies lean toward the light despite the pull to step back. A shoulder brushes another, canvas scraping canvas. The ramp edge shines now, white and unforgiving. Spray flicks inward and dots the face, cold pinpricks. Jaws set. A foot edges forward until the toe touches metal at the seam. The surf fills the space between breaths. The ramp does not move yet, and everyone waits inside that sound. The sway settles into a rhythm that stops meaning anything. He hears the engine and then forgets it, hears it again, unsure if it ever left. Seconds stop lining up. The same question circles without moving forward. His neck stiffens as he keeps his head angled down, muscles holding a position he no longer remembers choosing. He fixes on the row of boots across from him, lined along the deck, leather dark with caked mud that flakes when the craft shifts. One heel lifts and drops. Lifts, drops. The motion is small but exact. He follows it, counting without numbers, letting it pin him to the moment. His breathing slows just enough to notice. The deck rocks again and the boots slide a fraction of an inch. The pattern breaks. His thoughts scatter and reform in the same place, unchanged. He swallows, feeling the pull in his throat, and waits for the next lift of the heel, wondering only how long. He reaches for instructions he knows were given, but they come up thin, like paper held to the light. The words won't stay in order. Names of places slide away before they settle, leaving no outline behind. The engine's pulse pushes through the deck in steady beats, each one felt through the soles of his boots and into the base of his skull. A dull ache starts there and spreads forward, tightening behind his eyes. His hand closes around the rough webbing of his sling. He rubs his thumb along it, back and forth, feeling the fibers bite into skin. The men around him face inward, heads lowered, bodies held close to themselves. No one looks up. He adjusts his footing, shifts his weight, then stills it again. What remains is simple and narrow. Stand. Hold. Wait. He keeps his grip firm and lets the rest fall away, telling himself only to do what's next. The noise stacks on itself until it flattens. Engine, water, metal, something sharper threaded through all of it presses together without edges. He can't tell where one ends and another begins. The helmet strap digs into his jaw as he shifts his head, the rough edge biting skin that's already damp. His ears ring, a thin tone that doesn't rise or fall. Shadows slide across the inside of the craft as it moves, shapes changing without warning. He blinks, trying to track them, but they smear and overlap. Distance stops making sense. A sound that should be far feels close enough to touch. Another that ought to be near fades out of reach. He braces his feet wider, fingers curling and uncurling once, searching for something steady. The ringing grows louder than everything else. He lowers his chin and holds still, letting the pressure pass through him, thinking only that it is too loud, and waiting for the next change. His hands move again, checking what he has already checked. Fingers slide along the cold rifle stock, feel the smoothness, the familiar weight. The floor is slick with water now, boots shifting slightly as the craft pitches forward. He widens his stance without looking down, knees bending to catch the motion before it throws him. There is no plan left to review. His body works through habits on its own, tightening straps, settling the sling, adjusting grip until the wrists begin to ache. He rolls them once, then stops, afraid to loosen anything too much. The forward motion increases and then eases, like a held breath released halfway. He leans into it, shoulders squared, muscles drawn tight against the next lurch. Nothing he does feels like enough. He stays braced anyway, eyes forward, jaws set, telling himself to hold steady as the deck moves beneath him. The impact comes without warning or direction. There is no flash, no clear sound to follow, just a hard shove that runs through the craft all at once. Metal ribs vibrate under his hands, buzzing fast enough to blur into one feeling. The ceiling bolts rattle overhead, clicking against their seats as the hull shudders and then settles into a new, uneasy balance. His teeth knock together before he can stop them. He presses his palms flat against the deck and leans down, adding his weight as if it might hold the floor in place. Around him, bodies do the same. Helmets dip. Shoulders hunch. The space tightens as men press lower, faces turned away from the unseen source. The air shakes for a moment longer, then thins back out, leaving a sharp silence filled only by the engine's pulse. He tastes metal and salt. His jaw stays clenched, muscles jumping in short bursts he can't control. The tremor lingers in his arms, a leftover echo that refuses to fade. He waits for another jolt, counting nothing, listening for a change that might explain what just happened. Nothing outside shows itself. There is no shape to fix on, no edge to follow. The deck hums under him, steady again. His breathing comes back in shallow pulls. The thought arrives without ceremony, flat and heavy, landing where the last one did. Again. He stays low, hands spread on the metal, feeling for the next sign that something else is coming. His breath breaks into short pulls that never seem to reach the bottom of his chest. He draws air in and feels it stop halfway, like it hits a wall and turns back. The damp collar of his uniform clings to his neck as sweat slides down his spine, cold against skin already tight with strain. He shifts his shoulders once, trying to make space inside himself, but the movement only tightens things further. Around him, bodies stay crouched low, backs rounded, heads down. No one straightens. The vibration from the last impact lingers in the deck, a faint shiver that keeps passing up through his knees and into his ribs. His chest feels bound, held fast by something he can't loosen. A light pressure builds behind his eyes, urging him to take more air than his body allows. He presses his lips together, then parts them, forcing a slower pull in through his nose. It scrapes cold on the way down. He holds it for a beat, then lets it out carefully, hands tightening against the floor as if that might help. The craft keeps moving. He tells himself one thing, over and over, quietly enough to keep it contained. Breathe. The engine drops in pitch as the craft slows, and the change opens space in his head he doesn't want. He presses his palms down and feels grit bite into the skin, grains caught between flesh and metal. His eyes track the dark seams in the floor, following their lines until they break apart. In that pause, images force their way in. The deck splitting. The surface giving. His body tipping forward before it ever gets upright. His stomach pulls inward, a hollow draw that leaves him light and unsteady. The pictures don't pass. They layer on top of each other, one after the next, each sharper than the last. He shifts his weight, boots scraping, and digs his fingers harder into the grit to stay where he is. The craft rocks once more, smaller this time, and his heart stutters with it. He locks his jaw and forces his gaze back to the floor, muscles tight, breath held too long. The pressure builds fast. He lets the air out in a thin stream and grips the deck again, repeating the only order that still feels usable. Don't freeze. The ramp drops a few inches and stops. Metal grinds on metal. Then it lowers again, farther this time, and cold air pours in as if released from a held space. It hits his face hard, wet and sharp. Icy spray snaps against his cheeks and lips, stinging where sweat has already thinned the skin. The noise outside changes shape, breaking into harder edges that cut through the steady engine sound. The craft surges forward with the opening, and he shifts to keep his footing. Light spills across the floor in uneven blocks. He catches only pieces of what's beyond the ramp, gray water moving fast, flashes of white foam, dark shapes that refuse to settle into anything whole. There is no full view, just fragments arriving too quickly to join. His eyes water from the cold. He blinks and tastes salt. The air smells cleaner than inside, stripped of fuel and wool, but it burns going in. His face feels raw, alive in a way that pulls everything else tight. The rush in his chest is sudden and deep, a hard lift that pushes his shoulders back and then forward again. Men press toward the opening without looking at each other. Gear shifts and knocks. The deck tilts under the change in weight. His hands find the rifle stock again, slick now, and he leans into the motion as the craft drives ahead. There is no time to sort what he's seeing. The opening keeps widening, the cold keeps coming, and the only clear thought he has fits the movement already starting. Move. The shift comes fast as the ramp settles into its angle. His weight pulls forward under the load, dragging at him in a way he can't correct right away. Soaked fabric tugs at his thighs and hips, heavy with water, clinging as he tries to step. The surface under his boots isn't level anymore. The footing changes with each small movement, forcing his legs to work against it. His calves tighten and burn as they take the strain, muscles slow to answer. The body resists balance, lagging behind what his eyes expect. He widens his stance, then narrows it again when the angle changes, boots scraping for purchase. The ramp vibrates under him, a faint shudder that keeps traveling up through his knees. He breathes through his mouth, air rushing in too quick, and feels the weight settle harder across his shoulders. Every piece of gear seems to pull in a different direction. The effort it takes to stay upright surprises him, sharp and immediate. His legs feel thick, as if packed with wet sand. The thought comes with the strain, blunt and unargued, pressing in time with the motion. Too heavy. Boot soles scrape hard against the ramp as he moves, the sound short and rough under everything else. The waterline waits just beyond the metal edge, rising and falling in quick pulls. He steps forward and feels his knees resist, stiff from holding and bracing too long. The forward rush presses into his chest and carries him whether he's ready or not. Thoughts thin out and fall away. There is no space to hold them. Each step replaces the one before it without pause. The body decides first, shifting weight, leaning into the slope, absorbing the pitch as the craft drives on. His hands tighten and release once, fingers numb and slow to answer. Cold air cuts across his face again. He tastes salt and metal. The next step is already happening before he registers it. His mind arrives late, catching up behind the movement, offering only a single word that fits the pace and nothing else. Go! The water hits his legs with force, a flat strike that steals the breath he just pulled in. Freezing surf climbs fast, wrapping his calves and thighs, and the cold locks down muscle without warning. He jerks forward on instinct, but his steps come up short, feet landing closer together than he intends. The tide pulls at him sideways, tugging at soaked fabric and gear, testing his balance with each surge. The water churns around his legs, gray and white, heavy with movement. He feels it press and release, press again, as if measuring him. His thighs go numb in uneven patches, cold spreading upward in a dull wave. The surface under his boots shifts, sand sliding away before it can hold. He leans forward more than he means to, arms stiffening to keep from pitching down. His knees bend and straighten without rhythm. Each step costs more time than the last. The cold bites deeper, turning his legs thick and slow, as if they belong to someone else. He looks down once and sees only water breaking against his shins, no clear line where it ends. The pull of the tide keeps working, patient and steady. He tries to lift his foot higher and barely feels it leave the ground. The motion surprises him enough to break his focus. A tight sound leaves his throat before he can stop it. He swallows hard, breath shallow, and keeps moving because stopping feels worse. The thought comes blunt and immediate, lodged behind the effort. Can't feel. He pushes on, letting the water dictate the next step, waiting for sensation to return as the surf keeps dragging past him. The world drops to knee height. Everything above that line smears and loses shape, leaving only motion and water. He keeps his eyes down, watching the surf break around his boots, white foam folding and tearing apart as it rushes past. Sand grinds inside the leather with each step, rough and loud against skin that's already raw. The pull comes from behind now, a steady drag that tries to take his feet out from under him. He plants one boot and then the other, feeling the sting start in his toes, sharp and uneven. The cold turns the pain thin and distant at the same time. His reflexes slow, hands lagging behind the shift of his weight. He stumbles once, catches himself by leaning forward harder, arms stiff and wide. Water slaps his shins again. He lifts his foot and sets it down where the foam thins, then repeats the motion without looking up. The movement holds him together. He breathes through his mouth and lets the rhythm carry him, telling himself only to keep moving as the surf keeps pulling back. Fear thins out until it feels like effort instead of feeling. The heavy wet wool of his uniform drags against his legs, pulling downward with each step. Water still reaches his knees, shallow but stubborn, and the uneven drag keeps catching him off balance. He leans into it, hips working harder to move the load forward, a sharp strain starting along one side where the weight hangs wrong. Each step takes longer to finish. He lifts his foot and waits for it to clear, sets it down and waits again for it to hold. The delay builds on itself. His breathing grows louder in his ears, paced by the motion he forces through. The idea of stopping flashes once and is gone just as fast, dismissed by the pull at his legs and the pressure behind him. His hip burns as he shifts weight again, muscles working past their clean range. The drag never evens out. It changes with every surge of water, every inch gained. He keeps his eyes low and his body angled forward, letting momentum do what strength won't. The thought stays tight and constant, held in place by the strain itself. Don't stop. His boots leave the pull of the water and meet sand that won't hold. It looks solid enough, dark and packed, but it shifts as soon as his weight settles. Loose wet sand slides underfoot, giving way in short spills that twist his ankles before he can correct. He pitches forward, then back, arms lifting slightly to catch balance that never fully arrives. The slope rises just enough to work against him. For a moment, balance seems to return. His foot plants. The next step follows. Then the ground slips again, sand shearing sideways, forcing his leg to take the strain at an angle it doesn't want. His ankles ache with the quick corrections, small sharp turns piling on each other, The body tries to adjust, sending signals late, overcorrecting where it shouldn't. He staggers forward in uneven bursts, boots digging trenches that collapse as soon as they're made. The water noise fades behind him, replaced by the rasp of sand and breath. His coordination feels dulled, delayed by cold and effort, as if his limbs are answering someone else's instructions. He clenches his jaw and slows his steps, spreading them wider, trying to give himself time to feel the ground before committing. The slope keeps rising. Each step asks for a new calculation his body struggles to finish. He focuses on the simple act of placing his foot and keeping it there. The thought stays small and tight, matched to the motion as he pushes on across the shifting ground. Steady. Movement around him stays uneven, bodies spread out without order. He steps forward and catches sight of a man ahead losing his footing, knees buckling as the sand slides out from under him. A pack strap slips loose and drags, dark and wet against the ground. The man goes down hard, shoulder first, gear knocking into the slope. His gut tightens at the sight. He feels it pull inward, a quick hollowing that slows him for half a step. Then his foot lands and the motion carries him past. He does not stop. His eyes flick back once, then forward again, locking onto the next patch of ground that might hold. The fallen man stays in his peripheral vision longer than he expects, the image sticking where others have already dropped away. The advance continues around them, staggered and rough. Boots scrape and sink. He keeps moving, jaws set, shoulders hunched against the pull to look back again. The feeling in his stomach presses and then dulls as he forces it down. He angles his body into the slope and pushes on, letting the distance grow, holding to the only instruction that still fits the pace. Keep going. He knows the moment passed because he let it. The knowledge lands as his hand brushes the ground, knuckles dragging through wet sand before he catches himself. Grit sticks to his skin. He pulls his hand back and keeps moving, breath rough and uneven, pace slowed by the slope ahead. The beach stretches forward without detail, just more ground that has to be crossed. His jaw stays clenched, teeth pressed tight enough to ache. The choice sits with him, heavy but without words, carried alongside the weight already hanging from his shoulders. He doesn't argue it. There is no space for that now. Each step demands attention, pulling him back into his legs, into the scrape of boots and the burn in his calves. The air moves past him in short pulls. His arms swing stiffly, more for balance than speed. The feeling stays lodged somewhere behind his chest, adding to the load but offering nothing he can use. He keeps his eyes forward and his hands free, letting the pace settle into something he can maintain. Whatever that moment asks of him will have to wait. The only place for it is later. The ground ahead loses its markers. What should stand out does not. Shapes blend into one another, edges softened by motion and strain. He breathes in and the air comes gritty, tasting of sand and salt, scraping his throat on the way down. Each step follows the last without pause, the push forward unbroken, carried by whatever momentum remains. His temples throb in time with his stride, a dull pounding that spreads behind his eyes. He doesn't lift his head to check where he is. He moves because movement continues around him, because stopping would require a decision he no longer feels equipped to make. His boots find ground and leave it again, soles striking, lifting, repeating with the same narrow range of motion. The ground in front of him stays indistinct, rising and flattening without warning. He adjusts automatically, shortening a step here, leaning into the next one there. The body works through these changes on its own, drawing from habit instead of thought. His arms swing stiffly, more for balance than purpose. The weight on his shoulders shifts and settles, then shifts again. He tries once to recall where he meant to go and finds nothing clear enough to hold. The effort drains him more than the walking does. He lets it go and keeps moving, eyes fixed a few feet ahead, following the line of backs and packs in front of him. The pressure in his head stays constant, a reminder of how thin everything has become. He exhales hard, fogging the air briefly, then steps into it. There is no plan left to consult, only direction by motion. He angles himself where others are already going and accepts it, the thought arriving just in time to match the step. This way. Recent moments slide away as soon as they pass. He tries to place himself a few minutes back and finds nothing solid to stand on. The feel of water on his legs is already gone, replaced by the dry pull of salt crusting on his skin where it dried too fast. His tongue scrapes his teeth as he breathes, mouth open, air rushing in and out at the same pace as his steps. The horizon blurs ahead, a pale line that won't stay level. He keeps his eyes low, letting the relentless pace carry him forward. His head feels light, as if it's floating just behind his body instead of inside it. He blinks hard and sways once, correcting by planting his foot wider and leaning into the next stride. There is no sequence anymore, no clear before or after. Only motion holds its place. He follows it without resistance, arms swinging, shoulders working under the load. When a thought starts to form, he cuts it off and steps again, keeping his focus narrow and close. Don't think. Fear no longer rises or breaks. It settles into a steady pressure that moves with him. His fingers have stiffened around the sling, joints slow to bend, skin tight where it dried too fast. He loosens his grip once and feels a dull ache spread up his forearm, then closes his hand again to keep it working. The ground passes beneath him in a narrow strip, boots lifting and setting down with the same worn rhythm. The trudge evens out, neither fast nor slow. Each step lands with weight and follows through without thought. His breathing finds a pace that matches it, rough but dependable. The pressure stays in his chest, constant, no longer asking for attention. His shoulders sag a fraction, settling into the load instead of fighting it. Emotion drains out of the effort, leaving only sensation. Muscle, bone, breath. The ache moves from place to place but never leaves. He doesn't look for it anymore. He keeps his eyes down and lets the motion carry him forward, accepting the weight and the pull as part of the ground itself. The thought that remains is small and usable, fitted to the pace of his body as it keeps going. Just move. He slows without deciding to. The pace drops into something measured, each step placed and finished before the next begins. Dried salt cracks on his lips when he exhales, the skin tight and sore. He pauses in the shadow of something solid enough to block the wind, not fully stopped, just held for a moment. His limbs feel heavy, as if the weight he's been carrying has sunk into muscle and bone. The air here is quieter. Not silent, but reduced, sounds dulled by the brief cover. He shifts his shoulders and feels the pull along his back answer slowly. Fatigue settles deep, not sharp or alarming, just present everywhere at once. His hands rest against his thighs for a beat, fingers flexing once, then stilling. The ache doesn't change. It simply stays. The realization that came earlier does not leave. It sits with him now, unchanged by movement or pause. Fear is there, steady and unhidden, no longer demanding explanation. It doesn't rise when he breathes or fall when he steps. It has taken its place alongside the weight and the ache, another fact to carry. He lifts his head slightly and swallows, throat working around dryness. The ground ahead remains indistinct, but it exists, and so does he. That registers without surprise. He straightens enough to move again, legs slow but willing, and lets the moment pass without comment. The shelter gives way as he steps out from it, pace still reduced, attention narrowed to what comes next. The thought arrives quietly, without emphasis, settling where the others have already made room. I'm still here, He lowers himself just enough to touch the ground, palm pressing into the rough surface for balance. Grit and small stones bite into his skin, anchoring him there. Low cover sits nearby, close enough to lean against without fully stopping. The movement pauses, not by command but because his body runs out of clean motion. For a few seconds, there is only stillness and breath. The trembling in his arms fades to a faint quiver, then settles. What remains feels hollowed out, as if everything usable has already been spent. His shoulders sag and stay that way. Ideas that once defined him thin and drift off, leaving nothing solid enough to hold. Rank, purpose, direction, none of it fits here. Only the body's continuation matters, the simple fact of being upright and breathing. He shifts his weight and feels how close he is to the edge of it. The ground supports him. The cover holds its shape. That is enough. He lets his head dip for a moment, eyes half closed, drawing air in slow pulls that scrape his throat. Whatever else exists can wait. The only thought that remains is quiet and small, shaped to the pause before movement returns. Rest. He moves again without turning his head. Warm breath lifts into the cold air and disappears as soon as it leaves him. His shoulders ache with each step, a deep soreness that never fully loosens, but they keep working. The ground ahead comes into view a few feet at a time, nothing distinct enough to study, only space that has to be crossed. The pace is slow now, measured by what his body will allow. Each movement draws from what remains, careful not to spend more than he has. His arms hang heavy at his sides, swinging just enough to keep balance. The load shifts and settles with every step, familiar and unargued. There is no pull to look back, no room for that kind of thought. The air moves in and out of him steadily. His legs answer with dull obedience, lifting, setting down, repeating. Fatigue stays close, an ongoing drain that never lifts but no longer surprises him. He keeps his eyes forward and his attention narrow, holding it to the next stretch of ground and nothing beyond. There is no space left for meaning or outcome. Only the next moment waits, already forming under his feet. He steps into it as it arrives, shoulders tight, breath visible, carrying on with the one instruction that still fits the effort. Continue.